Queen Boadicea, Joan of Arc, Mary Marshall, Molly Hayes. These women all have one thing in common. They made tremendous sacrifices to be able to serve their countries and protect their societies from enemy combatants. Many of the rights and instances of equality enjoyed by women in the military and in society were put into motion by women who were inspired by these brave soldiers. Women have been serving in the military in various capacities and with distinction throughout history. Queen Boadicea led an uprising against the forces of the Roman Empire, burning ancient London in the process. She fought against the Romans until her death in 60 or 61 AD. Joan of Arc, canonized as a saint by the Roman Catholic Church, was deemed a heroine of France for her role in the latter half of the 100 Years' War. She was captured and tried by the English, who burned her at the stake in 1431. Military women feature a lot in the history of the newly formed United States. During the American Revolutionary War, women served various roles such as washerwomen, cooks, nurses, seamstresses, supply scavengers, spies, and sometimes soldiers. Many of these nurses invented new ways in which to help their patients, like stone hot water bottles, combination lamps, and food warmers, varying sizes of china feeding cups, and go chairs, which are wheelchairs, and fan chairs. During this time, women couldn't join the military as soldiers, so some enlisted disguised as men. If discovered that they were women, some were arrested and imprisoned for impersonating men. Women were used as spies during the war on both sides. They eavesdropped on conversations about troop movements, military plans, supply shortages, and deliveries. These spies easily carried the messages and supplies they gathered to neighboring houses and farms without detection. These roles are just some of the many ways women participated in the Revolutionary War. Either as nurses, maids, spies, or soldiers, these women stepped out of the safety and security of their traditional roles in society and risked their lives to serve their country. Those same roles and conditions continued throughout the 19th century. During the Civil War, women primarily served as nurses at field hospitals and aboard hospital ships. After the war in 1866, Dr. Mary Walker receives the Medal of Honor, the highest military honor for her work during the war, the only woman to have received it. Things start to change during the Spanish-American War in 1898. Dr. Anita McGee decides that the Daughters of the American Revolution should help the military find professionally qualified nurses to care for wounded soldiers permanently. Because of her efforts, the Army Nurse Corps is established in 1901, with the Navy Nurse Corps following in 1908. During World War I, women's roles in the military begin to expand. The Army begins to recruit bilingual telephone operators for switchboard work near the front lines in France, as well as stenographers to the Quartermaster Corps. The Marines recruit telephone operators and clerks to work in the States. Many are lost to the Spanish flu pandemic. 1920 sees the Army Reorganization Act enacted, which infers officer status and ranks to military nurses, but not full rights. World War II brings the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps in 1942, which then becomes the Women's Army Corps in 1943. Civil service pilots join the newly formed Women's Air Force Service Pilots for statewide missions. They work as transporters, test pilots, and anti-aircraft artillery trainers. The Navy, the Coast Guard, and the Marines also begin recruiting women for their women's reserves. During the war, women are serving in almost all non-combat jobs. Sadly, after the war ends, most are mustered out, returning them to civilian life. The Army-Navy Nurse Act of 1947 is enacted, making the Army Nurse Corps and Women's Medical Specialist Corps official parts of the Army and confers permanent commissioned officer status to its members. 1948 brings the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, granting women permanent status in all branches of the military. Executive Order 9981 ends racial segregation in the armed forces. African American women begin enlisting in the Marine Corps the next year. Female reservists are involuntarily recalled for the Korean War, mostly as nurses both stateside and in the theater of operations. An advisory committee on recruitment of women in the Korean War is formed in 1951, called the Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Services. The Army commissions its first female medical officer in 1953, as Navy Hospital Corps women are assigned to Military Sea Transportation Service ships for the first time. Peacetime and the Vietnam War see more expansion in the roles of women in the military, as the Army National Guard and the AFROTC program opens to women. The Supreme Court finds that inequities in benefits of male versus female service members is unconstitutional. The law that bans Navy women from ships is found to be unconstitutional in 1978, allowing women to serve on non-combat ships. The first woman astronaut is selected from the Navy in 1988. Another woman joins her from the Army in 1989. In 1991, women can begin flying in combat and begin to serve on combat ships in 1993. 2005 sees the first woman in history to be awarded the Silver Star for combat action in Iraq. These advancements have not come without struggles, however. There are still roles that women in the military cannot pursue, such as direct combat roles. Women have also seen resistance to their integration into the armed forces. That resistance has taken several forms, including sexual harassment, accusations of lesbianism, and racism and bigotry. While women in the military have made great strides towards equality in the military, there is still a way to go. Many women throughout history have made great sacrifices to get where we are today. These are the people who have suffered the pain of progress.
I have a dream today. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.